Have you ever taken the wrong client for your business and you look at yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing here? Of course you have. It's happened to the very best of us. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. My name is Andrea Eppolito. I am a Las Vegas-based wedding planner and event designer, and we come together here on this channel every week celebrating life, luxury, and above all else, love. So if you are a wedding planner or an event professional, if you are a creative entrepreneur, or just a couple who is obsessed with all things weddings, events, and making the world a beautiful place, welcome. You are in the right place. I'm thrilled to have you, and I love that you are willing to spend a part of your week with me. Now, last week, we talked about the fact that I say no to most of the couples that reach out to me. And there are typically about 5 reasons that I will turn down a client. Now, I didn't just make these up. These aren't just random boundaries that came to me one day. These are things that I have developed over the last 10 and 20 years. Signals and red flags that tell me that this particular client is not going to allow me to do my very best work. And if I can't do my best work, then quite simply, I don't want it. And it is easy to say that you're going to do these things. It's easy to set up these boundaries. But really, I want to talk today about what has happened in the past when I have not honored that and how I've gotten to the place that I am today, with the hopes that it will help you establish boundaries for your business. So today we are going to talk about the wrong client that I did take, the wrong client that I separated with midway through, and one of the clients that I simply declined after meeting them once or twice. So first off, the client that I took that was not a great experience, not an ideal client for me. Now, this was about 8 or 9 years ago. I was still fairly new, and I had this idea in my head that the phone may never ring again. That what if people don't like me? What if I don't make any money? And it's easy to do that. It's easy to have imposter syndrome. It's easy to start kind of thinking, oh my God, I'm a fraud, or I'm really poor right now and I need to pay a bill, or I just don't know. And then the phone rings and you're making decisions from a place of fear. You're making decisions based on a place of professional vulnerability. And I don't like making any decisions unless they are from a really authentic place of strength and desire. But 9 years ago, that's not where I was. And I got a phone call, and the bride on the other line sounded fantastic. She sent me a picture of herself, and she was beautiful, very well styled. We liked the same things. We liked the same brands. Our banter back and forth was just easy. It felt like I was talking to a friend. And immediately when I hung up, and on top of it, they had a great budget, especially for the work I was doing 9, 10 years ago. And I hung up the phone and I looked at my husband and I was like, I hope I get this. And the next day I went for my in-person consultation. And when I got there, the bride and the groom did not have the same energy. They didn't have the same rapport that the bride and I had. They argued. And I'm not talking like cute little bickering. I mean, they argued. There were some tears. It wasn't me, but there were some tears. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, oh, this is bad. But in my head, I wasn't thinking about whether or not this was right for my business. I was thinking, how do I save this? I was thinking, gosh, I hope they still get married because I'd really love to do a wedding of this caliber. I'd love to do a wedding for a couple that is going to photograph so beautifully because they're so attractive. I'd love to do a wedding in this location because I just haven't worked there yet. And so in my head, I was going through all of the benefits, all the reasons that I wanted it to work. And I ignored the red flags. I ignored the fact that they were not on the same page in terms of budget. They weren't on the same page in terms of style. They didn't have an easy communication. And so yes, I took the wedding. And for 9 months, I not only was the wedding planner and the event designer, I was also their accountant. I was their marriage counselor. I was the person that each one came to. I was good cop, bad cop, mom and dad. The bride would call me up with one thing and then ask me to relay it to the groom. He would want me to move things around and change them and then not tell her. It was such a difficult place. And I hated the process. I quite literally would see their names on my phone and my heart would sink. I had anxiety about everything that they could possibly want. I never wanted to go to lunches or meetings because in my head I knew that they were going to be arguing, that they were going to be fighting, and that ultimately it was going to spill over into how they interacted with me. People got snippy, people got mean, people got angry. And it wasn't the best way for me to work. Now, did they get married? Yes. Was it beautiful? Yes. Did I do the best work that I could do within the situation, within the confines of the relationship that had been established? Yes. But did I do the best work that I could have done? No. And when the pictures came in and the video came in, when I sat down and reviewed it, I said, I didn't enjoy this. I didn't like this process. I didn't like how it felt. I didn't like the type of person and the type of planner that I needed to be in order to get them to the finish line. I didn't like feeling like I couldn't come up with an idea. I didn't like feeling like I couldn't present something because I had to walk on eggshells because I didn't know who was getting along on what day and what spot. And I promised in that moment, I said, I will never do this again. Plain and simply, the money isn't worth it. Because what did it cost me? It cost me the emotional anxiety. It cost me the stress of constantly being worried about whether or not they were going to be mad or they were going to yell or they were going to fight or they were going to leave a bad review. I carried that into my house and into my life. I don't think you can separate. It definitely wore on me. And I very much believe that I had a wall up. And so creatively, I was blocked. But looking back, I think it very much had to also impact the way that I approached and the way that I was interacting with my other clients because I was on the defensive. I had accepted a client that didn't communicate in a way that I was comfortable with, and I allowed that energy to become the driver. And I knew it was something that I was never, ever going to allow again. So fast forward, and I'm using broad strokes. A few years later, so let's call it 4 to 5 years ago, very similar situation. I have a bride call me up. She's lovely. She is everything that I could want in a bride. Not only does she love my work, but she understands it. She has the same priorities that I do. She wants to create an environment. She wants to do something that hasn't been done before. She really believes that the right lighting, the right chair, the right song at the right moment can turn a moment into a memory. And so I am thrilled to take this couple on. And we are going down the path together, and it's fun. It's just, great snappy energy back and forth. I have an idea. She builds on it. We really were in this incredibly beautiful place. But all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, this other entity comes in. This third party, we are going to call them, that exerts a lot of influence over what it is that my bride wants. And suddenly, the energy changes. All of a sudden, she's not vibrant and she's not excited and she's not exciting and she's not engaged. She's looking at this other person as if she's waiting for them to give her the answer. And not surprisingly, there was friction between myself and this third party. And I thought, this is going to go really badly. My bride is clearly not happy. And I know this because after 6 months, I've developed a rapport with her, and I can tell that she's being pulled away from the things that she wants most. I'm not happy because all of the work we've done up until that point is now being questioned and dissected. And so I suggested, let's sit down and have an all team meeting. Let's get everyone together, everybody on the same page. Conversation did not go well. And the things that were said and the way that they were said made it very clear to me that this is not going to be productive. And so I sat down with my clients and I said, look, this is what I was hired to do. And for the last several months, I've had the very best time doing it for you and with you. And that was the goal. The goal was that the process was just as amazing as the pretty. And we're right there. We're right there. And I want to take this all the way to the finish. I want to get you to the end. I want to give you the experience that you hired me for. I want to give you the moment that you deserve. But that can't happen with too many people here. We have too many people exerting influence. We have too many people making decisions. Things are not going well. And you're being pulled into a place that I don't want you to go, that you don't want to go. And my clients told me that they had discussed it and that was the direction that everyone agreed they should go in. I knew that I couldn't work with the new third party. I knew that I was set up for failure. I knew that the way that the conversations were being had, I knew that the tone in which I was being spoken to was not a healthy environment for me. It certainly wasn't good enough for me to be able to do my best work. And now, having 5 or 6 years in the business, I also knew that I could not allow that kind of working environment to filter out and spread and impact my partners, my vendors, my employees. It just wasn't an acceptable exchange of ideas and of energy. And so what I did was I wrote up a separation agreement and I said, here is what you've paid. Here is what you owe. Here is all of the work product. Here is everything that we have done together. Here's your path forward if you want to continue on this path. Here are the steps you need to take if you want to go in a different direction. I want you to have whatever it is that you say you want. But if this is it, I can't give it to you. And it was a difficult conversation. And there were a lot of hurt feelings. My feelings were hurt. I had invested all this time and I had this beautiful vision for this beautiful couple and I wanted to give it to them. And for forces that were completely out of my control, I was being stopped from doing that. But having been in a bad situation before, I knew I can bang my head against the wall knowing that it's not going to turn into a door. Or I can remove myself and I can let them go down a path that I don't want to travel. And so we went into the negotiations, we separated, and then when a client is not mine, I look at that client like, you're an ex. I don't want to see it, I don't want to know it, I don't want to be a part of it. And it's not to be mean and it's not to be injurious and it's not to be snippy. It's just if we have decided that our relationship and our work together is done, if we've decided not to do this together, then I don't feel like I should bear witness to whatever it is that you choose to do. And so I unfollowed and I stepped away. And a few months later, a friend of mine sent me a picture and said, "Isn't this your bride?" And I stopped and I was like, because it's not that I didn't recognize her. I mean, obviously I know who she is. I've met with her. I looked at it, but it took me a second because her as a bride, where she was in an element. She was in a space that was the exact opposite of everything else that she and I had designed together. It was the antithesis of everything she said she wanted. As a matter of fact, It was everything she told me she didn't want. Now, was it beautiful? Yes, it was beautiful. Was it well executed? I'm sure it was. She hired another planner. Were the pictures very nice? Yes. There's nothing that I could point at and say there's a technical flaw in the work. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't the wedding she wanted. I knew it was the wedding she settled for. And I knew that I would never, ever be happy with that. I knew it would never be enough for me. It would have been me just finishing to get to the end, to get the paycheck, and that's not ever who I wanted to be. And so having taken a bad client all the way to the end, having separated with a client that turned into a not ideal client halfway down the path, by the time the next not good client for me came around, I knew it. I had established these are the red flags. I knew what my boundaries were. And I lived the icky. I lived the uncomfortable. I lived the stress and the hard conversation. And I just knew it wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't the kind of business that I wanted to run. And so now, fast forward, I get a phone call from a hotel that I have a great relationship with, and the catering manager says to me, "Hey, I have an Andrea Eppolito bride for you." And I'm like, "Yes, send her." And she sends her. And our first conversation, again, we're in a good place. I like everything she's saying. She likes what I'm saying. She's a big fan of my work. She knows my designs. She's got very interesting feedback in terms of what she saw that she liked, interesting feedback of what she saw that she didn't like, which lets me know she's really thinking about the process. She's thinking about the outcome. And I'm like, ooh, I think I like her. She asked for a contract. I sent it. And she calls me back and she says, "You know what? I just want to go over this with you in person." And I was like, amazing. She said, I'm coming in. We're going to have lunch. We met for lunch. I took her to lunch. And all of a sudden, I felt like she was dissecting things. And she was breaking down, not asking questions about the contract, because not only do I love when people ask me questions about my contract, but I think she should ask questions. And I welcome that because it opens up a whole conversation. But she's dissecting prior work. And she's wanting me to give her very specific ideas. And she's wanting me to review budgets. And she's wanting me to make phone calls. And so I said, "Okay, I'm so sorry. Did you bring the signed contract, or are we ready to execute? Can we sign the contract, pay a retainer? Can we go down this path?" And she said, "I'm just not comfortable yet." Okay. Well, my first inclination is to say, did I not do my job? Because I will always take the blame first. And so I said, like, wow, okay, so where is it that you are not comfortable? What is it that you're looking for? And she was looking for design work. And she was looking for me to do my job before she hired me to do my job. And I explained to her that that is not how this process works. I explained that in order for me to work for her, for me to be the custodian of her budget and of her memories, for me to be able to set her up, wedding planning is a full contact sport. We've got to both be engaged. And that only happens when I'm on your team. And she said, "Okay, I will sign the contract," which she did. And she said, "And I will wire you the money tonight." I said, "Great." Tonight came and went, nothing. The next day, she emailed me a bunch of questions. I wrote her back and I said, "I am so sorry. I cannot seem to find your wire transfer. Can you do me a favor? Can you send me the receipt?" And she said, "I need these questions answered first." And right then and there, I knew we had broken trust. She had broken trust. And I said, "You know what? I have given you my very best in terms of explaining who I am, what I do, why I do it, and how. And it was my hope that that would have instilled a level of trust and a level of confidence. But if you don't have it now, my fear is you're never going to have it. And so it's going to be best if we separate. And I don't think I'm your planner. And she was like aghast. What do you mean you're not my planner? No, I signed the contract. You did sign the contract, but you didn't send me a retainer. You didn't fully execute. And so I have not been hired. And generally speaking, I can tell you that this kind of back and forth is never a good thing. Because if you don't trust me going into the process, you're not going to trust me in 30 days. You're not going to trust me in 90 days. You're going to want to dissect and nitpick. You're going to look over my shoulder and you're going to be like a hawk. And you have the right as the client to do that with whomever it is that you hire. But I have an obligation to tell you that I don't work that way. And so I am very sure that we are not a fit and you need to move in a different direction. She was incredibly offended. Incredibly offended. She felt like it was an indictment about her. She doubled down on the fact that she had no problem paying me, that she could absolutely afford it. She got mean. She got nasty. Everything she said and did 100% clearly told me that I was right, that we were not a good fit. She did end up finding, she did this, by the way, after me. She did it with about 3 or 4 other planners. Ultimately, she did hire a planner. And while I didn't keep up with the event because I really just felt like that was a client and a situation that I didn't want anywhere near my business, I did hear later that it was a very difficult process. It was difficult for the planner. It was really difficult for the vendors because the bride just became a steamroller who kind of pushed through people. The venue did not have a good experience. There were a lot of negative things written. There were discounts given. And when I heard this, I just said like, God, I'm so grateful that I didn't take it. I'm so glad that I didn't have that ego, that need to feel like, oh no, I can fix it. I can make it better. I can get through this because she's got a great last name and, a historical family and she's got a beautiful ring and she's going to have a beautiful dress and, I can suffer for the art and at the end I'll get this pretty picture and it'll be on Instagram and aren't I a hero? I am not interested in being a hero under those circumstances. Another example that I could give you, I had a bride who seemed to be so lovely. And when it was just she and I, the way that we traded pictures, we would be looking at the same things at the same time. We used the same words. I'm pretty sure we showed up to our meeting carrying the same purse. I always get a kick out of that. Like it's one of those things that I'm like, yes, we're in our zone. And she was fantastic until the groom showed up. And he was not. And he changed the whole energy. And she became a different person when she was with him. And I was like, what do I have? Like, is it a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde? Is she really who she is when she's with him? Is she really who she is when she's with me? And I know it sounds silly, but the groom was rude to the staff. He was rude at the front door. He was not nice at the table. He was condescending with the waitress, which from a hospital, like I don't understand people who are mean to hospitality workers or to servers in general. And then he got condescending with me. And that was where I was like, thank you so much. I have a husband, I have a father, I have a son. None of them are allowed to speak to me that way. In God's name, what kind of check do you think you could possibly write me that would open this up to where that would be an acceptable form of communication? But I also don't think that those conversations need to be had sometimes ever. And so I listened and I let them talk and I let it go for a little while. And then I found a point and I said, okay, I'm going to stop you there. I don't want to waste your time. And I don't want to take you down a path that is not good for you. I'm hearing everything you're saying. From what I can tell, and please stop me if I'm wrong, you're telling me that you want this kind of an experience. And they were like, yes. I said, okay, I am so sorry for the confusion. That is not what I do. It's not what my company is known for. Those aren't my priorities. Like, those aren't the things that I care about the most. And so I have to tell you, I think that you would be better off with another wedding planner. And they were like, what do you mean? No, we like you. I said, I appreciate that. But based on what you're telling me, I'm not the best person in the best position to give you what you're looking for. And if we went to contract, if we did this would be a transactional exchange. You're not hiring the right person. I'm not the right person for this job. So what I want you to do is I want you to go back to the internet. I want you to go back to Instagram. I want you to find some other people whose work that you like. And I think you need to go out and you need to interview other planners, because I can tell you I'm not able to do this. And so I'm going to respectfully withdraw myself from your consideration and know that you're going to find the right person for you somewhere out there. This actually went pretty well. They were like, yeah, I mean, that sucks, but we get it. I was like, cool, you get it. Same thing. They went through 2 different planners, from what I can recall. There was nothing good. The only thing that came out of the wedding is that they got married. In terms of the vendor experiences, the people who worked with them, the expectations that they had. And later I got a letter from them talking about, and I read this years ago, the fact that they felt like they hired the wrong planner and they wished that they would have that was a different one. Sorry. Believe it or not, that happens. You'll not work with somebody and then you'll hear from them years later. It's happened on 4 or 5 different occasions with me, and I think it's lovely that people come back, but it's always an interesting conversation. This particular couple came back. They did believe that they hired the wrong planner. They did believe that they would have had a different experience had they worked with somebody like me. And the letter was more accusatory, as in, it's your fault that we didn't have the wedding that we wanted because you didn't think that you could do a good job. And so you sent us out there and we had to book somebody else, and that's not fair. Okay. Like a terrible thing to feel, that to know that there is a couple, any couple, mine, somebody else's, anyone, who regrets their wedding, who didn't get the experience that they wanted from their wedding. That's awful. I mean, that's a terrible thing. But to assign blame and to feel like it's my fault, again, was a signal to me saying, this client doesn't share my worldview. This client, I fully believe, would have had the same experience with me. They would have had it with anyone because that's who they were. That was their mindset. That was how they approached things. Everything was, the glass is half empty. It was always about the things that were wrong. It was about the things that they didn't like. It was about the way that they were slighted. That's not who I am as a human. That's not how my business is run. That's not how my partners and my teammates work. And so if that's your worldview, and I recognize it, then that voice in the back of my head that says run is right. Because regardless of who planned their wedding, they were going to look at the world from a more negative perspective. And so ultimately, that results in things like nasty Instagram comments and cease and desist letters and negative reviews online, none of which I want to be a part of my business, none of which I want to be a part of my world. You see, I'm sharing all this with you today because I want to close the circle and I want to bring it back to how this impacts you. I took a journey from taking the wrong client to separating when I realized that I couldn't get the job done, to now being in a position to where I protect the energy and the integrity of my creative life, of my home life, and of my business by just saying no. Saying no early and saying no often. Now, why is it that I want you to do that? Why do I want you to listen to that voice? Because I want you to think about the worst client you've ever had. And I know you have had them. And if you haven't, it's because you've not done any work. But there has been a bad client. And I guarantee you, the minute that you think about them, your stomach's going to turn. It's going to flip. You're going to get that hot, sweaty feeling all over again because your body remembers that. It's such a visceral, organic response to, oh my God, that was terrible. And I want you to think about how much money you made from that client. And ask yourself if that feeling, that gross feeling, that stress feeling, that heaviness, that worthlessness, that anxiety, ask yourself if that feeling was worth it. And I am willing to bet that it wasn't. When you invite and you allow the wrong influence, the wrong client, the wrong couple, when you invite that into your business, you invite it into your life. And it is going to cost you so much more than the check that they write you. It's going to cost you time. Time with yourself, time with your family, time with your other clients. It's going to give you a block creatively because you are never going to feel confident enough to put the work in front of them or to put the work out there that you want to do because you're going to have to play it safe because you don't want to rock the boat. It's going to cost you in terms of your relationships with the industry because your partners and your vendors and the venue are all going to have this negative experience. And if they have to credit money back or they have to do something else for a client that you brought to the table, that can impact that relationship. It's not going to break it. We all get it that sometimes there are clients and things go sideways. I've asked vendors to give back money when it was warranted. And we've all done the right thing. That's important too. Knowing that you can go to a partner and say, hey, I believe in my client. This didn't go well. How do we make it right? But when it's just a client who's looking for that, that's a rough one. That's a bad position to be in. And forget for a second about, you can't. I was going to say forget about the reviews. You can't forget about the reviews because the internet lives forever. But think about what it does to your other clients. Think about what the wrong client steals from the right one. When you are underwater and you can't breathe because you are stuck with the wrong client, you are failing to show up as your best self to your ideal client. You are failing your future clients because you're not putting out your best work. And ultimately, you're failing the industry. You're failing me. You're failing my friends and my colleagues and the people who've put their blood, sweat, and tears into this because every time a couple has a negative experience, every time the connection isn't real and that spreads, it impacts all of us. It influences the next generation of couples. It influences the next generation of clients. And you take enough bad clients and it's going to change you. It's going to change your business. And I don't want that for you. So think about the worst client that you ever had. Identify the red flags. Promise yourself that you are never going to take that client again. Forgive yourself for the mistakes that you made in terms of how did you let this happen? And always go out and be better tomorrow than you were today, because ultimately that is the goal for all of us. So thanks for spending so much of your day with me. I hope that you were able to relate to these stories, and I hope that the next time the wrong client is in front of you, you hear my voice and you run. I'll talk to you again soon.